Shadows twist where whispers grow. The edge of light begins to flow. A world unseen through fractured glass, where futures meet the echoes past. Step closer now, the veil is thin. A riddle starts where dreams begin. The experimental medium calls your name. Nothing here will be the same.
Have you ever felt that, that subtle sense that there's more to our abilities than meets the eye? Capacities maybe just waiting to be understood.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we're diving into today on the Experimental Medium podcast. We're looking at a really unique historical angle, exploring how folks back in the late 19th century approached developing what they called mediumship.
And specifically how it connects to mesmerism, which is fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're using your source material, this pamphlet from 1893 by a W.H. Bach. He was known then as a lecturer, a demonstrator of psychic phenomena.
Right, and you have to remember the context. The late 19th century was buzzing with interest in spiritualism, psychic stuff, all of it. Bach's stated goal, though, wasn't really mystical in the spooky sense.
No.
No, he aimed to give practical methods for what he called honest investigators. He saw these phenomena as being governed by natural law, not something supernatural.
Okay, so that's our mission here, exploring the specific historical view from your pamphlet. We want to unpack the techniques Bach described for, cultivating these abilities.
Yeah, look at the different kinds of manifestations he talks about.
Right, and maybe try to understand why this perspective, over 100 years old, might still be interesting or offer a different lens today. It's all coming straight from this 1893 text you provided.
Let's get into it.
All right, so jumping right in, the first big thing from this source is its foundation. Bach is super clear. Mediumship isn't supernatural, period.
He actually calls it naturalism in the fullest extent of the word.
Yeah, not ghosts or spooks like in the movies, but manifestations happening because of natural laws, managed, he thought, by unseen intelligences.
And what's really interesting is how he immediately tries to ground this historically. He points to, ancient practices.
Oh, yeah.
The oracles in Greece and Rome, prophets mentioned in texts like Josephus, even the really detailed plans for the Ark of the Covenant in Exodus.
Wow, okay. How does he connect those?
He argues they were all early forms of mediumship, and they absolutely depended on getting the conditions right. The Ark, for instance, he saw the specific instructions for building and handling it as necessary to keep its power.
Which he calls
Magnetism. It all comes back to magnetism and precise conditions for him.
So, based on that, what is a medium, according to Bach? It doesn't sound like you need superpowers.
Not at all. He says it's about having a peculiar magnetic condition of the body, something that lets your body vibrate, kind of in tune with these finer forces he talks about.
So the person is like the instrument.
Exactly. The instrument, or the negative pole. The spirit control, as he calls it, is the positive pole, and together they make a natural battery.
He uses that piano simile too, right?
Hmm.
The medium needs to be tuned up.
Yeah, precisely. Tuned up so the spirit control can make decent music, metaphorically speaking.
And why did he think people should pursue this? What was the point?
Well, proving life after death was definitely a big part of it for him. But he really stressed that it was also for the moral, spiritual, and intellectual improvement of everyone involved.
So not just about seeing cool phenomena.
Definitely not. He warns against just being phenomenon hunters. There's this strong call in the pamphlet for mediums, for spiritualists to act with integrity, to respect themselves so others would respect them. He even mentions how he avoided bad press, these newspaper roasts, by insisting on proper conduct.
Interesting. Now, he does talk about Indian controls, which sounds, dated.
It is, and it reflects the views of his time, 1893. His explanation was that he and others then believed Native Americans were closer to nature and had more of this nature's magnetism than Caucasians, who he saw as more artificial. We have to see that in its historical context, obviously.
Right, absolutely. But what was his advice on interacting with any spirit control?
That's actually pretty forward-thinking in a way. Treat them like rational beings, he says. Don't make them fetishes. Reason with them. Insist they act properly. Even correct them if needed.
He tells a story about that, doesn't he?
He does. About a apparently rude Indian control in a circle pulling hairpins out of a lady's hair. Bach says he addressed the spirit directly and told it to stop, which shows his approach direct, rational interaction.
This all seems to hinge on one thing he keeps coming back to.
Conditions, absolutely. Proper conditions are non-negotiable for Bach. Just like a carpenter needs tools or a house needs a foundation, you need the right setup.
Okay, so given that, how did he actually suggest people develop these abilities? Let's get into the techniques. He spends a lot of time on circles.
Yes, the circle method. It's very specific. You arrange sitters alternating positive and negative.
Which usually meant male and female, or
Temperament.
both,
Yeah.
really. Typically, male was seen as positive, female negative. But also, temperament nervous sanguine types, like complexion males, could be negative, for example. The point was creating that battery by joining hands.
And the vibe was important. Crucial. Harmonious atmosphere, pleasant conversation. He warns against trifling or degrading topics because, in his view, attracts, you'd get similar types of spirits.
So choose your circle members carefully.
Very carefully. Based on compatible magnetism. He suggests an ideal number, maybe 7 to 10 people, and the rules were strict. Promptness, consistency, same time, same people, same seats every single time.
What if someone just didn't fit, magnetically speaking?
He even gives advice on how to handle that gently without causing offense. It was all about maintaining that delicate balance.
What was the alternative to circles?
Sitting alone for development. He thought this could be just as good, maybe even better sometimes, because keeping a circle consistent is hard.
How'd that work? Sit quietly.
Pretty much. Cultivate quiet, maybe drowsiness. He believed this allowed the controlling influence to come forward more easily. He also mentions just 2 people sitting together could work well.
But it wasn't quick, was it?
No, definitely not. Patience is key. He hammers this home. Development is slow. He mentions one case taking 15 years, though he does estimate an average of maybe 3 weeks to 3 months of regular sitting to see something.
And he had a warning about people promising quick results.
Oh, yeah. He called them developing mediums, or more bluntly, sharks. People guaranteeing specific phases fast, taking your money, and disappearing.
Like someone taking one music lesson and claiming to be a teacher.
Exactly that analogy. Bach insisted no one can guarantee a specific phase. Even the spirits, he said, often don't know what's possible until they try. An experienced medium might help guide, sure, but not all are good developers. He names a Prof. J.W. Cadwell as someone who apparently had a good track record.
Okay, so if you sit patiently, what might actually happen? What are these phases of mediumship he describes?
Right. He references the Bible here, 1 Corinthians, diversities of gifts, but the same spirit. He sees lots of different ways this can manifest.
Starting simply, usually.
Often, yes. Table tipping is mentioned as the common starting point. Simple stuff. Hands lightly on a table, wait for movement or raps.
Is there a code?
Yep, the basic one. 1 tip a rap for no, 3 for yes, 2 for doubtful, and then you could painstakingly spell things out using the alphabet.
And raps themselves could be a distinct phase.
Yes, seen as quite desirable, developed similarly. He tells this anecdote about a woman who could produce raps loud enough to be heard 100 feet away in a big hall. Pretty amazing if true.
Then things get a bit more involved, right? Like writing.
Automatic writing, yeah.
Yeah.
Often followed tipping or rapping. He gives practical advice. Use a hard pencil. Tough paper, he suggests manila wrapping paper. Even carpenter's pencils.
What's the process like?
Usually starts with a tremor in the hand, then maybe irregular movements, scribbles, and then it can become more orderly, writing letters, words.
Does the writer know what they're writing?
It varies, according to Bach. Sometimes totally unaware, sometimes knowing a few words ahead. He even mentions writing backwards or upside down.
Backwards, how would you even read that?
He suggests using a mirror. Practical guy.
And then there's trance mediumship. He saw that as a higher phase.
Generally, yes. Following the cruder physical stuff, he breaks it down into 3 types.
Okay.
Unconscious, where the medium is totally out of it, remembers nothing. Conscious, where they're sort of semi-aware, get the gist of the message, but maybe not the exact words. And then inspirational.
That sounds like the top tier.
For the mental phases, yes. Medium's faculties are sharp, eyes might be open, but they feel no personal thought driving the words, they just flow. He talks about developing trance through becoming passive, feeling sensations like sinking or dizziness. He also really stresses testing the spirits, referencing the Bible again, John 4:1, build trust.
He seems quite focused on proof, though. What about the more physical phenomena?
Yes, the independent phases. He saw these as really strong evidence. Independent slate writing was one he considered maybe the most satisfactory.
Like old school chalkboards.
Sort of, yeah. Common wooden frame slates were preferred. You'd put maybe a tiny bit of pencil or just pencil dust between two slates sealed together, or use one slate in darkness, maybe under a cloth or in a cabinet.
Sounds like it required patience.
Immense patience. He cites a Dr. Stansbury taking 3 years to get his oil painting phase going after mastering slate writing. Bach himself used pencil dust and would make a test mark first. The writing often started as just curves, then letters, then words.
Oil paintings between slates. How?
Crazy, right?
Huh.
He mentions a Mr. A. Campbell's method. Fasten 2 slates, put oil paints outside the slates, cover them with oil or glycerin, and no brushes involved. The painting would appear inside.
Wow. Okay. What else?
The psychic or occult telegraph. He ranked this second only to slate writing for being convincing.
A telegraph. Seriously?
Yeah, a setup with a key, a sounder, battery, a sensitized key apparently, and metal poles in a box where the medium put their fingers. You'd wait for fluttering feelings, then clicks, and communicate using Morse code.
That's elaborate.
It really is. He also briefly touches on other things. Physical manifestations in light and dark voices, hands, lights appearing in a circle, trumpet seances, using a horn to supposedly amplify spirit voices, like a sunglass for sound, and full-form materialization.
Materialization, like actual forms appearing.
That's what he describes. The highest physical phase, he calls it. Usually needed a cabinet, took years to develop. He mentions test conditions used by others, like a wire cabinet, and his own experiences feeling materialized forms while holding his hand, which convinced him it wasn't trickery.
Where did people learn all this?
He suggests that once a medium was developed to a certain point, they could get further instructions directly from their spirit controls.
Interesting. What about other abilities like healing?
Right. He covers healing, too, framing it as an ancient thing laying on of hands. Again, the body as a battery. Right hand draws energy, left hand gives it.
So anyone could do basic healing.
He suggests even undeveloped people could help with minor things. But a developed medium working with controls could achieve marvelous results by directing or adding force. To develop it, he just says experiment on friends, practice drawing energy away or giving strength. Sensitive hands might even move on their own.
And diagnosing illness.
Similar idea. Connect with the patient, hold hands, stand behind them, feel their pain, and then speak the impressions you get. He acknowledges you'll make mistakes at first, but urges perseverance. And crucially, throw off the patient's condition afterwards with upward passes.
He also mentions clairvoyance and clairaudience, clear sight, clear hearing.
Yes, often attached to other phases. But here's a key point for Bach. He didn't think it was physical sight or hearing.
Oh, then.
He believed they were impressions made directly on the brain, his evidence. They can happen when your eyes and ears are physically closed. Passivity, again, was key for development.
So it's an inner sensing.
That seems to be his view. He also complains that the term clairvoyant was often misused for anyone with slight mediumship. And things like crystal gazing or divining rods, he saw them as just variations, tools to help focus impressions.
Any final tips on conditions?
One more, yeah.
Yeah.
He advised sitting in good light for development.
Really? Not darkness.
He thought manifestations usually happen under the conditions they were developed in. So even if it was slower, developing in light was better because the ultimate role was to produce phenomena in bright light, which was more convincing.
Okay, this brings us to a major part of the pamphlet, something he saw as closely related and powerful. Mesmerism.
Yes, or psychology, or hypnotism, as it was also called. He thought it was the next great power after mediumship, used between humans man and man.
Did he see it as new?
Not entirely. He mentions Mesmer, Dodds, French scientists, but also traces it back to ancient practices healing touch, priests making people sleep or dream. He cites examples like Valentine Greatrakes curing scrofula by touch centuries earlier.
And he gives instructions on how to do it.
He does, a How to Mesmerize section, framed specifically as a way to help develop mediumship.
Okay, break it down. Who's involved?
You have the operator, the subject who's being mesmerized, and he calls them the volunteer. The operator needs certain qualities. Level-headed, good judgment, good talker, gift of gab, magnetism, self-control.
And the subject. Are they weak-willed?
He strongly refutes that. He says good subjects are often nervous, sanguine temperament, attentive but not weak. He claims many are physically and mentally superior to the operator.
So the steps.
Sit opposite, Operator grasps the volunteer's right hand and elbow. He explains the nerve connection there. Instruct the volunteer to look steadily into the operator's eyes. Watch for the change.
The change.
Eyes getting glassy, fixed, or the pupils rolling up. That's the sign.
Then what? Waving hands?
Kind of. Making passes. Downward passes, he says, throw force onto the subject. Upward passes, take it off, release them. You can also apply pressure near the nose and forehead.
And talking is important.
Crucial. The operator's voice needs to be smooth, confident, constant suggestion. Something is going to be done. He even gives a sample script to start with. You watch the eyes closely to see if they're ready, how they react, snappy closure versus dreamy versus the upward roll.
What if something goes wrong, like they get stuck?
He addresses catalepsy rigidity, says you need to release them quickly. Upward passes, sharp noise, stamp your foot, direct command. He also advises operators to start with really short controls, like 10-15 seconds, and always release the subject themselves at first to build their own power.
How does it progress from just eye fixing?
Once the eyes are fixed, you move to physical control. Maybe fastening their hands together over their head using specific passes and commands, then maybe preventing them from speaking your name, using hand gestures or breath control. The final stage is stopping their thought action, giving them commands, and having them follow a plan.
This sounds like stage hypnotism almost.
Yeah.
How does it help mediumship?
Here's Bach's specific theory. He claimed mesmerism helps by getting the subject's motor nerves under control. This frees up the spirit control, he argued, to focus just on the sensory system.
Making spirit control easier.
Much easier, in his view. He went so far as to say mesmeric control and spirit control are nearly identical. That's why, he believed, spirits could sometimes take over a subject from a mesmerist during a session.
So the operator's confidence is key.
Absolutely. And knowing how to release the subject, fully joking, clapping, upward passes, reversing the process.
What if spirits do show up during this mesmerically induced state? How do you manage that?
He gives advice there, too. You can ask for simple actions like head movements for yes, no. For speech, you might start with breathing exercises, then noises, letters, words, maybe a simple handshake and greeting.
And if it's an unwanted spirit, like the hairpin puller?
Same principle as before. Correct them. Use magnetic force, demagnetizing passes, ask them firmly to leave, or give a direct command. It all ties back to treating them rationally but firmly. His final advice really sums up his approach. Avoid superstition like the plague. Treat spirits as rational beings, as potential friends. Reason with them.
They thought discussion was good for both sides.
Yeah, spirits could learn from mortals too, he believed. But ultimately judge them by their actions, their fruits, not just fancy talk or impressive phenomena. He uses Mephistopheles as a warning looks good, but bad underneath.
One last thing he mentions is the device he made.
Right, the psyche. A wooden cabinet, basswood, no metal. Designed, he claimed, to help development maybe speed it up by combining principles and being magnetized somehow, like an early experimenter's tool.
Wow. So that's quite a journey through this 1893 perspective from W.H. Bach. We've seen mediumship framed as, well, a natural capacity tied to the body's magnetism. We've unpacked his very detailed practical methods, circles, sitting alone for creating the right conditions.
Yeah, and the sheer range of phenomena he described, from simple taps to, well, materialization.
And this really fascinating role he saw for mesmerism, not just as its own thing, but as a specific tool to assist the development process based on his experiences.
It's clear he approached it all very practically, almost like an early investigator for his era, presenting methods from experience, talking about natural laws, pushing for testing and personal effort, not just blind faith.
Yeah, the focus is really on developing your own capacity and learning to be discerning about whatever influences you encounter.
Exactly.
And maybe that leaves us with a thought, putting aside how we might interpret spirit control today. Could these techniques Bach meticulously described, creating specific magnetic environments, cultivating passivity, using focused intention like in mesmerism, could they point to some basic principles about working with subtle energy or consciousness or influence that we're still exploring?
It's a provocative question.
And what does it mean, even metaphorically, to follow his advice and approach unseen intelligences, however you define them, as potentially rational, beings you can interact with, reason with, even correct? What capacities were they trying so hard to unlock back then?
Definitely food for thought.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Experimental Medium podcast. To this look into a really specific historical approach, keep exploring these fascinating ideas.
Whispers creeping through the unseen. This is where the strange convene. Step into the unknown mind. Secrets hidden, twist and bind. Truths that linger in between. Welcome to the spectral stream. A voice that stirs the silent night, guides you through the fading light. Journeys deep beyond the real, where unseen forces are revealed. Step into the unknown mind. Secrets hidden, twist and bind. Truths that linger in between. Welcome to the spectral stream. Electric sparks and haunted tones. Reality's edge becomes your home. Questions rise like fragile smoke. The uncharted realms silently spoke. Step into the unknown mind. Secrets hidden, twist and bind. Truths that linger in between. Welcome to the spectral stream. Electric sparks and haunted tones. Reality's edge becomes your home. Questions rise like fragile smoke. The uncharted realm silently spoke.